Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to be setting up my, what month are we on? March, April budget. I love how you turn on the camera and the first thing you do is forget everything you want to say. Now, for those of you who were here for my mid-month check-in last month, you'll know that I had a bit of a hiccup with my national insurance. Just to very quickly recap this, the UK government were doing a scheme where they were allowing us to pay off gaps in our national insurance over the last 15 years. So you had a 15-year window that you could pay up to now. And I thought that scheme was going on for another year for some reason, and it turns out it wasn't. So I found out kind of middle of last month, after I'd already done the spending for last month, and I could have saved more money there and I didn't realize, that I was going to have to make any payments I wanted to make to fill the spaces in my payment history by this paycheck, because I don't get paid until like mid-April now, and obviously the end of the tax year will be before that, so I won't have the option afterwards. Now, this was a bit scary for a couple of reasons. Number one, I did not have enough money to cover all the payments I wanted to make. And number two, the payments that I had made towards the gaps in my national insurance haven't actually registered on my account yet, because HMRC are so behind in processing the payments that have been made, because you have to, well, there's a few different ways to do it, but you send the money essentially to their bank account, which is what I did. The national insurance receipts, whatever it is, account, but they've had a big upswing in the amount of people trying to do this. So they've had a lot more payments to process because people want to get their repayments in before the end of the tax year, because the scheme is finishing. Usually the government will only let you go back 6 years to fill in gaps there, and after that you've just lost the opportunity. So it's a closing window. But according to some forum responses from HMRC themselves, they're currently only just now processing payments that have been made in September. I made my payment in January. I've sent them £1,200 already, and I've got no idea if they've received it, but I'm literally on a timer to send them the rest, so I just sort of have to trust the system, which is a little bit scary. I do of course have receipts for all the payments, so I can call them and sort of get something sorted if it ends up being a problem, but just not knowing how long it's going to take to process all this stuff, it leaves me in a little bit of limbo, and I'd really rather it was resolved because it's quite a lot of money. So the aim for this month's budget was not to fill in all my sinking funds and do all the things, because I didn't do any of that. I took every possible penny I had that would do me any good, and sorry, I just got a message through and it distracted me. I took every possible penny I had and I put it into effective payments for the national insurance. When I say effective, I think it's binary in terms of you fill a payment or you don't, because when you look at your payments, it either says year is paid or year is not full. So if I were to pay, say, £200 towards the next year but not to complete it, then it wouldn't count as the year being paid. And you have to pay X amount of years in order to be funded for your state pension. So there was no point me getting like my last 100, because I'm going to talk about this in a minute, and paying towards the next year, because it wouldn't have been effective to do so. It would have been the same as just throwing that 100 away. So I looked at the list of payments that I had. I think I showed you this in my mid-month check-in last month, where I had 9 possible years to pay off. The 1,200 that I've sent that hasn't registered yet went towards completely paying the first 2 years and partially paying the 3rd year, because fortunately the lovely person who I spoke to when I rang grouped all my payments into one so that I could use the same payment number, and then that way I didn't have to call for a code, a reference code for the payment every time I wanted to send it. I think I spoke to you about this before. So I had figured out last month that I needed to pay something like £1,700 to be able to pay off as many years as possible, but it was going to leave me with like 3 years that were not paid off, that I was going to lose the opportunity to do. However, I got super fortunate at the beginning of this year, because one of the benefits of my contract here, because it's an international contract, I'm sure you know if you've been here before, but I live in Oman, and so an international teaching job, one of the benefits you usually do is that they will provide you with a flight home annually. and they'll usually pay that flight home around now in the year so that you can book it. Some places provide you with the flight and book it for you. In this case, they give us the money, and it turned out that they gave us the money in this paycheck. So I ended up with a slightly bigger chunk than I thought. They paid just under £800, and to fully fund 1 year is something like 824. So I had just enough money in my account where I could finish off that payment and I could pay 1 extra year, which was a lovely surprise. And even though I know it's only 1 extra year, it feels so much better to say, okay, I lost a couple of years than it does to say I lost 3. I don't know why it feels like so much more, but it feels like so much more. Now, I was debating taking money out of my emergency fund and my other sinking funds to try and cover those last 2 years, but I just didn't want to start again. It would have been detrimental to me now, it would have left me vulnerable, but more mentally, I would have felt a little bit defeated even if I had achieved paying off the national insurance. So I'm fine with losing those 2 years. I've got enough to be able to make them up later just by paying regularly, so I'll live with it. But that does mean I made some pretty deep cuts in all my other things. The only things I continued to pay, my pension, I will still be paying my private pension provider. Try and say that 3 times fast. I've obviously still paid my subscriptions. I've only got a couple now, so it's not very much, but that went in, and I still put money aside for my taxes. But aside from that, everything else went towards national insurance, and I ended up paying, I think it was about $2,600 off, but you will see it in the numbers. So I'm not feeling too badly about that. I did want to pay those final 2 years, but not at the cost of sacrificing all the progress I had made. And I am quite excited that it means in the next few months that I will be able to redistribute the money I was putting towards national insurance to some other goals, which is really nice. So that's pretty much where I am. If I remember anything else to tell you, then I will tell you during the voiceover when you're looking at my actual documents. Oh, I do want to say, because there were so many changes and I wanted you to see what I usually do versus what I did this month, because there was a lot of differences, instead of putting it onto the PowerPoint, I've actually used my working spreadsheet, because I have an Excel document which is less pretty than the PowerPoint, but is clearer and is what I use on a day-to-day basis to track my spending. And we're just going to use that one this time because I think it shows everything a lot more clearly. Okay, so with all that, I suppose we should get into the numbers. All right, so as I said before, we are using the working document this time around just because it's easier to compare. So I'm just going to go through this now. So as we can see, I had my regular salary up here, and then I had the additional income of the flight allowance, and then an extra 100 because I brought over the clothing from last month, and then I split what I had left over from last month, added it to the clothing, and put it all in here. So let's go down to fixed bills. My fixed bills remain the same. I have home internet at 37 and it costs 37. It's technically 36 something, but I round up to make it easier. Electricity, I had only put about 5 on last time. I can't actually even remember if I put it on or not, but I had run it down, so we did a full 15 this time. My cleaner cost me 10 a visit. She comes every couple of weeks. I've taken the 10 out in cash ready for her this Thursday, but I haven't spent it yet, but I've got 20 a month for her. Onto the variable expenses. Groceries, I've got down to 120. I have spent some of these because this is the document I track in. Grocery spending is a little bit higher at the moment because the friend that takes me to the groceries is away for a couple of weeks, so I just did a big shop and hopefully I won't need to go back next week. So I'm not too alarmed by the fact that I'm already up at 42, but we have groceries at 120 for the month. We have transport at 30, school only at 10 because I'm off school for a couple of weeks, so half the expenses I usually put in there. Beauty and health, we had 30, and I did go and buy some things when I was at the mall the other day, so that's got me covered for the month. Miss Home, I've got 10. Eating out and delivery, because I was trying to put some things together and I knew I was going to spend extra on clothing, I decided to just cut it this month. I've got my regular spending at 25 and then the increased clothing allowance that we discussed before. So that meant that I had a total of 397 down here. That would be my monthly cost, which according to my little chart up here means that I need to send home 1,384 Omani Rial. Now, when we go over to my send home budget, this is where we see a lot of differences this time. So the income was quite high. It ended up being 2,907, and I will be getting about 700. Oh, I've got it here, 777 from YouTube, but I don't receive that for another few days, so I haven't put it in yet. Now, after I figured out what the total for the maximum number of years that I could pay off with this month's paycheck would be, that was the aim I was going for. So that aim ended up being 2,607 to cover all but 2 of the years that I needed covered. So to do that, I made a lot of changes in my costs. Now, my fixed bills in my first account are not changing. The savings is auto-drafted, so I didn't want to change that. So that's still 150 going into the savings. But I didn't give myself any other sending, and I didn't add anything to my emergency fund for this month, so it's staying at 2,000. My subscriptions, I have no choice over. Well, I have the choice to be subscribed, but I can't choose not to pay them for a month, so I paid the 13 for these 2 as usual. My private pension, I will pay in the regular amount this month because it makes no sense to miss it. But what I've done, I don't mind paying that a week or so late. So I'm going to use the YouTube money right here to pay the difference when it comes in and end up just making that payment a little bit later. So I took the difference out from this paycheck, which was £56. And when I get the YouTube money in, that payment will go. The national insurance contributions were going to be 500, and as we've said, ended up being 2,607, which was a big old chunk of change to find. And I found that money by going down to my sinking funds. So as we'd said, I didn't pay into my emergency fund this time around. Travel, I didn't pay anything into it. I'll sort that out later. Tax is the one thing I did continue with. I paid into my tax because I'm going to do my taxes in April. I do have some money on account. I think I'm going to owe a little bit more. But I don't actually have to pay that until January, so it's not the end of the world. But the extra 100 wouldn't have made a difference on how many years I could pay off, so it was pointless not putting money in there. Everything else I did not contribute to. So my home tech, medical and hair had already been sorted, but my gifts and Christmas, I haven't put any extra money in. However, and this is not really how this is meant to work, I didn't put money in, but I did take money out. I spent £50 because, for anyone who doesn't know, it's Mother's Day in the UK today. I need to call my mum. So I organised with my sister, we were going in together on a present, and my niece's birthday is next month, and I made the purchase of a present for her. So I did spend £50 out of my sinking funds, and after this month I will start to build those up again. So that means my total spend in my accounts in the UK is £2,926, which is a lot, but I'm quite excited. I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do with the money from next month. Obviously, I'll just have a month's adjustment for the payments I missed into my sinking funds, but after that, it means I get to put it in a new place. So I should see some good progress on my other goals, on building my emergency fund, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's where we are. I hope all that made sense and was clear, and I was going to say concise, but I'm never concise, so there we go. And I will let you know how things are going when we get to the middle of this month. I'm off for the next couple of weeks, so I'm going to try and keep my spending under control, aside from the clothing stuff I talked about, but I've already spent some of that. I did a shopping trip today, actually. Look at the mug I got. Look how cute it is. So I treated myself to that, and I bought some clothes which I needed, and just a couple of, I like a lipstick. So a little treat yourself, but I'm going to be out of school for the next couple of weeks. So we'll see how that goes. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.